The rain was pounding on the roofs of the old neighborhood where we grew up. The streets that remembered our children's laughter now seemed alien. Max stood in front of me, his face illuminated by a flickering lantern. He was holding a pistol in his hand, but he was shaking as if the weapon weighed tons. There's a torn bag of money from my store between us. His store. We built it together until it disappeared 3 years ago. Why, Max? My voice dropped to a whisper. There was a cold burning in his pocket, the key to the safe, which he had never found. He knew that I was hiding it where we had buried the treasure in childhood, a piece of glass from a bottle in a paper boat. But now, instead of treasures, there's a stack of bills soaked in sweat and betrayal. He took a step back, and the light fell on the silver medallion around his neck, the one I gave him the day he saved me from falling off the bridge. There was a picture of us inside. Now the glass is cracked. You don't understand, Alex. I needed to. His words were drowned out by the roar of the train rushing over the viaduct. We both shuddered. Once there, we had sworn to become brothers forever. Suddenly, he threw the gun on the asphalt. The sound of metal made me remember when I was 14 he smashed the nose of a guy who called me a wimp. Run, he whispered, pushing the bag towards me. But a piece of paper fell out of his jacket pocket, a hospital certificate with someone else's name and diagnosis circled in red. Stage 4 cancer. A siren wailed somewhere in the darkness. Max turned around, and the locket broke off the chain, falling into a puddle between us. He didn't pick it up. I froze, looking at the locket lying in a puddle. The rain was pounding on it, as if trying to wash away the dirt, but the crack on the glass only became more noticeable. Max had already taken a few steps towards the dark alley, his silhouette disappearing into the night. My heart was beating so loudly that I could barely hear the siren getting closer by the second. I shouted, but he didn't turn around. His figure disappeared into the shadows, leaving me alone with a bag of money, a gun, and a locket. I bent down and picked it up. The cold metal burned my palm, as if reminding me that the bond between us could no longer be saved. The photo inside was blurred by moisture, and our smiles turned into pale spots. The siren was getting louder. I looked at the gun lying on the asphalt and at the bag with the money. The thought that Max might have stolen them not for himself, but for someone else, pierced me like a knife. A hospital certificate with a false name. Someone else's name? Or his real name? Someone he was trying to help? Or was it himself, hiding from the past? I grabbed my bag and ran after him. The alley was narrow, dark, and smelled of damp and rot. There's graffiti on the walls that we used to paint together. Our names, now almost erased by time. I shouted his name, but there was no response. Only the echo and the sound of rain. I saw him coming out of the alley. He was standing under a streetlight, his back to me, looking off into the distance. His hands were in his pockets, and his shoulders were tense. I got closer, but he didn't turn around. Max, stop, I said, panting. We can fix everything. I won't let you just leave. He slowly turned around. His face was pale, and his eyes were empty. You don't understand, Alex. I've been gone for a long time. The Max you knew died 3 years ago. Only this one remains, this ghost. You're not a ghost, I whispered, handing him the locket. You are my friend. And I won't let you give up. He looked at the locket, then at me. A shadow of that old friendship flickered in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared. You can't save me, Alex. No one can. The siren deafened us. The police cars stopped on the street, their headlights blinding. Max looked at them, then at me. His lips twitched as if he wanted to say something, but instead he abruptly turned around and started running. Max, no. I shouted, but it was too late. The police jumped out of the cars, shouting at him to stop. I froze, not knowing what to do. Run after him? Stay? The bag of money was dragging me down like a weight of guilt. One of the policemen came up to me. "Do you know this person?" "What is it?" he asked, looking at me suspiciously. I looked at the locket in my hand, then at the bag. "Yes," I said softly. "This is my friend." The policeman stared at me intently, his hand involuntarily reaching for his holster. "Your friend just robbed your store, right?" His voice was harsh, but there was a hint of doubt in it. I nodded, unable to speak. The bag of money in my hand felt heavier than lead. "He's not what he seems," I finally managed. "He needs help." The policeman frowned. "Help? He's armed and dangerous. We can't just—" I interrupted him, holding out the locket. "That's all he has left. He didn't want that." "At him. He has his reasons." The policeman looked at the locket, then at me. His gaze softened, but only for a moment. "If you know where he might be, tell me. This is your chance to help him." I froze. Memories flashed through my head, our old hiding place by the river, the abandoned warehouse where we hid from the rain, the bridge where he saved my life. Where could he go? Where would I go if I were in his shoes? I do not know," I lied, clutching the locket in my hand. "But if you find him, please don't shoot. He's not who he seems." The policeman nodded, but his eyes told a different story. He returned to the car, and soon the sirens began to wail again, receding into the night. I was left alone, with the bag of money in a locket, which now seemed to be the only thread connecting me to Max. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't just stand there and wait. I threw my bag into the car and got behind the wheel. The rain was hitting the windshield, but I barely noticed it. There was only one thought in my head: the bridge. The bridge was the same as I remembered it: old, rusty railings, the river rushing below. It used to be our place. The place where we swore to be brothers. The place where he saved me. And now I knew he would be here. I got out of the car and saw him. He was standing on the edge, his back to me, staring into the dark water. His figure seemed so fragile, as if the wind could blow him away at any moment. "Max," I called, but he didn't turn around. "Please don't do this." He slowly turned around. His face was wet from the rain, but I couldn't tell if it was tears. "You shouldn't have come, Alex," he said softly. "You can't stop me." "I won't let you leave," I said, taking a step forward. "You are my friend. We've been through too much to just give up." He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw despair mixed with anger. "You don't understand. I can't live like this anymore. I can't be who you want me to be." "I don't want you to be anyone else," I said, handing him the locket. "I want you to be yourself. Whatever you are." He looked at the locket, then at me. His hand trembled, but he didn't take it. "I don't deserve this, Alex. I ruined everything." "You didn't destroy us," I said, taking another step. "We're still here. And we can fix it." He closed his eyes, and I could see his shoulders shaking. "I do not know how." "We'll find a way," I said. "Together." Max stood on the edge of the bridge. His figure, illuminated by the dim light of a street lamp, seemed ghostly. The rain continued to fall, mixing with the silence that hung between us. I took another step forward, but he abruptly raised his hand as if to stop me. "Don't come any closer, Alex." His voice was hoarse but firm. "I don't want you to see this end." "Do you think this will solve anything?" My voice was shaking, but I tried to hold on. "You'll just run away. And I'll stay here, with questions that will never be answered." He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw the pain that he had been hiding for so long. "You don't understand. I'm already dead inside. The Max you knew is gone. Only this one remains, this ghost." "You're not a ghost," I said, clutching the locket in my hand. You're here. With me. And I'm not just going to let you disappear. He closed his eyes, and I saw his hand clench into a fist. You can't save me, Alex. No one can. You didn't give me a chance to try, I said, taking another step. Give us this chance. He looked at me, and there was a shadow of doubt in his eyes. Why? Why are you holding on to me like that? I'm not the same person I was. Because you're my friend, I said, handing him the locket. And friends don't give up on each other. He looked at the locket, then at me. His hand shook, and for a moment I thought he was going to take it. Instead, he turned abruptly and took a step forward, toward the edge of the bridge. Max, no. I shouted, rushing towards him. But it was too late. His body tilted forward, and he disappeared over the railing. I rushed to the edge, my heart pounding in my chest. The dark water was swirling below, and I couldn't see him. Only the rain falling into the river, and the silence, which seemed deafening. I was standing on the edge of the bridge, clutching the cold, wet railing. My heart was pounding and my ears were ringing with adrenaline. There was no splash or movement in the black depths below. Only the rain pounding on the water, as if nature itself was mourning what had just happened. I shouted, but my voice was drowned out by the sound of the rain in the river. There was no answer, no sound. There was only silence, which weighed on my chest like a stone. I looked around, looking for some hope. Cars drove by, their headlights illuminating the bridge for a moment, but no one stopped. The world continued to live as if nothing had happened. But everything stopped for me. I grabbed the locket that I was still clutching in my hand and looked at it. The crack on the glass seemed even deeper, and the photo inside seemed even more blurry. But I couldn't just stand by and watch. I couldn't let it end like this. I rushed down to the riverbank. My feet slipped on the wet grass, but I didn't stop. Every step was a cry of despair, every breath a plea. I didn't know what I would do if I found him. But I knew I had to try. The river was cold and fast. I went into the water, feeling the current trying to knock me down. Max. I shouted over and over, but there was no answer. Only the sound of water and rain. And suddenly I saw him. His body, helpless, adrift. I rushed forward, not thinking that I might drown myself. The water was slapping my face, but I kept swimming until I got to him. He was unconscious, his face was pale, his lips were blue. I grabbed him and started dragging him to the shore. Every meter seemed like an eternity, but I couldn't stop. Not now. Not after everything. On the shore, I lowered him to the ground and began to perform artificial respiration. My hands were shaking, but I repeated the movements over and over again. Please, Max, I whispered. Don't go away. Not now. And suddenly he started coughing. Water gushed out of his mouth, and he opened his eyes. They were cloudy, full of pain and fatigue, but he was alive. Alex. He whispered, his voice barely audible. Why? Why did you do that? Because you are my friend, I said, feeling tears mingle with the rain on my face. And I won't let you go. We were sitting on the shore, wet and shivering, but together. Max stared at the river, his eyes filled with pain, but also with something else, maybe hope. I held the locket in my hand, feeling like a crack in the glass was a reminder that some things would never be the same. But maybe it's not necessary. Maybe it's enough just to be here, now, together. The rain continued to fall, but I knew we couldn't stay here forever. There were questions ahead, answers to be found, and choices to be made. But at that moment, on the riverbank, we were just two friends who had been through too much to give up. We didn't talk much on the way back. Max walked beside him, his steps hesitant, but he held on. I could feel his shoulder touching mine sometimes, as if he was looking for support. We returned to the store where it all started. The money bag was still in the car, but now it seemed so insignificant compared to what had happened. What now? Max asked when we got inside. His voice was low, but there was a hint of hope in it. Now we figure it out, I said, putting the locket on the counter. Together. He looked at the locket, then at me. I do not know where to start. Let's start with the truth, I said. Tell me everything. Why did you do that? Why did you disappear? Why do you? Did you want to leave? He lowered his head, his hands clenched into fists. I was in debt, Alex. Big ones. I thought I could fix it, but I only made it worse. And then I found out that I was sick. And I thought it was better to just disappear than to be a burden. You've never been a burden, I said, putting my hand on his shoulder. You are my friend. And we'll get through this. Together. He looked at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. I don't deserve this, Alex. You deserve a chance, I said. And I'll give it to you. We started small. We returned the money, talked to the police, and found a lawyer. Max started treatment, and although the path was long and difficult, he followed it. We started spending time together again, just like in the old days, but now there was more understanding and fewer secrets between us. I fixed the locket. The crack remained, but it became a part of his story, just as our scars are a part of us. We were no longer the boys who swore to be brothers forever. We became men who knew the value of friendship and were ready to fight for it. And even though the future was unclear, I knew one thing: we could handle it. Because we were together. And that was the main thing.